Hello everyone, and welcome to my channel General Hospital today. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. The air in the penthouse was always still, almost unnervingly so. It was a silence purchased with great wealth, a buffer against the chaotic hum of Port Charles below. But on this particular afternoon, the stillness felt different. It was not peaceful. It was the dead calm before a storm. Monica Quartermaine had just finished a quiet lunch with her grandson Danny, the simplicity of the moment a stark contrast to the complexities that defined their family. As she watched him leave, a familiar figure appeared in the doorway, one that always sent a ripple of unease through the meticulously ordered Quartermaine world. Erika, the woman who had inserted herself into their lives with the tenacity of a weed through cracks in pavement, stood with an expression that was an unsettling mix of triumph and venom. Her eyes, sharp and calculating, scanned the opulent room before landing on Monica. "Monica," Erika began, her voice syrupy with false sympathy, "I think it's time we had a truth session. For the good of the family, of course." Monica's posture straightened, her instincts as the family matriarch kicking in. "Erika, I'm not sure what you think this is, but now is not the time." "Oh, but it's the perfect time," Erika countered, stepping further into the room, her heels clicking decisively on the marble floor. "You see, I've been doing some digging. A little birdie, or should I say, a disgruntled former business associate of the late, not-so-great Mr. Frank Smith, whispered something in my ear. Something about a night decades ago that set a certain unstoppable chain of events into motion. The mention of Frank Smith, a name synonymous with Port Charles's criminal underbelly, caused Monica's blood to run cold. She knew with a sudden terrifying clarity where this was heading. "I don't know what you're talking about, and I suggest you leave." But Erika was undeterred. She was a woman who fed on the discomfort of others, and Monica's growing anxiety was a feast. "It's about the accident. The one that supposedly killed Jason Morgan. But we all know he didn't die, didn't we? He just changed. The golden boy, the promising Quartermaine heir, was wiped clean and reborn as Jason Morgan, the enforcer, the hitman. But why? Why did he become that? The official story was always brain damage. A tragic accident that altered his personality. But what if it wasn't just an accident? What if it was something more? Unbeknownst to the two women, another figure had paused in the grand hallway just outside the open door. Jason Morgan himself had come to see Monica, a rare, brief window in his perpetually guarded schedule. He froze at the sound of Erika's voice, his body going rigid. The name Frank Smith was a trigger, a relic from a life he had long since buried, but whose consequences he lived with every single day. Erika continued, her voice dropping to a theatrical whisper that carried perfectly through the stillness. "The story goes that Jason's car went off the road. But what Frank Smith's associate told me was different. He said there was a payment, a substantial one, made to a man known for making problems disappear. Not to kill Jason, no. That would have been too obvious. The payment was to orchestrate the accident. To ensure that Jason Quartermaine would be so severely injured that he would never be a threat to the families. What was the term? Dysfunctional aspirations. The Quartermaines, you see, couldn't control the good son, AJ. But they saw a different, more malleable potential in Jason after the accident. Or perhaps they just wanted to punish him for his loyalty to AJ. The accusation hung in the air, vile and poisonous. Monica's face was a mask of horror. "That's a lie. A disgusting, vicious lie. We would never." "Wouldn't you?" Erika sneered. "Edward Quartermaine was a ruthless man. And you, Monica, you've always been desperate to keep this family together, no matter the cost. Even if the cost was your own son's mind." It was at that precise moment that Jason stepped into the doorway. His face, usually an impenetrable mask, was a tempest of conflicting emotions. The carefully constructed walls around his memory, the void where Jason Quartermaine used to be, suddenly felt like a lie. The headaches that had plagued him for years, the fragmented, nightmarish flashes of the crash, a blinding light, the screech of tires that didn't sound quite right, now took on a new sinister meaning. Erika turned to him, a cruel smile playing on her lips. "Ah, Jason. Perfect timing. I was just enlightening your mother about the true origins of your career change. It wasn't fate. It was a Quartermaine plot. Your family paid to have you destroyed. The world seemed to slow down for Jason. The quiet penthouse was suddenly filled with a roaring in his ears. The word family, a concept he had always held at a cold professional distance, now felt like a betrayal of the deepest, most primal kind. All these years, he had believed his transformation was a random twist of fate. He had built an identity on the ashes of the man he was, finding a twisted sort of purpose in the clarity of the criminal code he lived by. But now that entire foundation was shattered. His life, his very being, was not an accident. It was a deliberate act. A transaction. And the targets of his rising incandescent rage were clear. The architects of his destruction. The first person his ice-blue eyes locked onto was Ned Quartermain, who had just entered from the terrace, having overheard the tail end of the conversation. Ned, the reasonable one, the businessman, who had always benefited from the stability Jason's new life inadvertently brought to the family empire. Jason, wait, Ned said, holding up his hands in a placating gesture. You can't possibly believe this hysterical fabrication. Erika is a liar. She's trying to tear us apart. But Jason was beyond reason. The programming of a lifetime, assess the threat, neutralize the threat, kicked in, but it was fueled by a raw human anguish he hadn't felt in decades. Erika's revelation wasn't just information. It was a key that unlocked a prison door. And the thing that emerged was a fusion of the cold enforcer and the betrayed son. He didn't speak. Words were a luxury he no longer possessed. With a guttural sound that was more animal than human, he lunged. It wasn't the precise, calculated move of Jason Morgan, Sonny Corinthos's right-hand man. It was wild, unrestrained. He slammed Ned against the grand piano, the discordant jangle of keys a soundtrack to the violence. His fists flew, not with the goal of incapacitation, but of pure, unadulterated punishment. You knew. Jason growled, each word punctuated by a blow. You all knew. You turned me into this. Ned, caught completely off guard by the ferocity of the attack, could only try to shield his face. Jason, stop. It's not true. Monica screamed, rushing forward, but she was thrown back by the sheer force of Jason's rage. The scene was one of utter chaos. The refined elegance of the Quartermain home violated by primal violence. As quickly as it began, Jason released Ned, who slumped to the floor, blood trickling from a cut on his brow. Jason's chest heaved, his breath coming in ragged gasps. His eyes, wild and unfocused, scanned the room. They landed on Olivia Quartermain, who had rushed in at the sound of the commotion. Olivia, always fiery and defiant, stared at him in shock. Jason Morgan, have you lost your mind? To Jason, in that moment, her defiance was just another layer of the family's complicity. She was part of the machine that had chewed him up and spat him out. He took a step toward her, his intent clear. You stay away from her. Ned croaked from the floor, but he was too injured to intervene. Jason ignored him. He grabbed Olivia by the arms, his grip like iron. You were all happy to look the other way, weren't you? He snarled, shaking her. As long as the money kept flowing. As long as the Quartermain name stayed clean. And I was the one getting my hands dirty. Let go of me. You're insane. Olivia struggled, but she was no match for his strength. He shoved her hard, sending her stumbling backward into a glass display case. The glass shattered, and Olivia cried out as she fell among the shards and the ruined heirlooms. The physical damage was minor, but the psychological shock was immense. The unflappable Jason Morgan, the man of controlled actions, was gone, replaced by this terrifying, unpredictable force. The epicenter of his rage, however, was still to be confronted. The person who, in his fractured logic, bore the ultimate responsibility. His mother. Monica. He turned to her. The woman who had wept for the son she lost, who had spent years trying to bridge the gap between the boy he was and the man he had become. Now, in his eyes, she was a conspirator. Her tears a performance. Her love a lie. The anger seemed to drain from him for a moment, replaced by a cold, terrifying stillness. It was somehow more frightening than the explosive violence. You, he said, his voice low and deadly quiet. You did this. You let them do this to me. Monica shook her head, tears streaming down her face. No, Jason, my boy, no. I would never. I loved you. I love you. Love. Jason spat the word out like it was poison. You call this love? You let them destroy my life. You stood by while they made me into a monster. He advanced on her slowly, each step measured. All those years, you looked me in the eye and you pretended. It's not true. Erika is lying. Monica pleaded, backing away until she was pressed against the cold marble of the fireplace. Jason was now inches from her. The physical threat was palpable, but the emotional violence was far worse. He wasn't going to hit her. The attack was verbal, a lashing out with the only weapon that could truly mirror the pain he was feeling. You are my mother, he whispered, the words laced with a bitterness that seemed to suck all the air from the room. You were supposed to protect me. Instead, you sanctioned my murder. The man I was, you killed him as surely as if you put a gun to his head. And you have the nerve to stand there and talk about love. He leaned in, his face a mask of torment. I have no mother. I have no family. The Quartermaines are a cancer. And from this moment on, you are all dead to me. The finality in his voice was absolute. He looked at the scene of destruction, Ned bleeding on the floor, Olivia trembling among the broken glass, Monica shattered against the mantelpiece. He had attacked them all, not just physically but fundamentally. He had torn down the fragile illusion of family that had persisted for so long. Without another word, he turned and walked out of the penthouse, leaving behind a silence more profound and devastating than any that had come before. The storm had passed, but the wreckage it left was absolute. The secret was out, and with its revelation, Jason Morgan had declared war on the very people who had, in their own twisted way, created him. The fallout would ripple through Port Charles, threatening not just the Quartermaine dynasty, but every alliance and every life connected to the man who was now a weapon without a master, a son bent on destroying the house that built him. The immediate aftermath within the Quartermaine mansion was a study in shock and damage control. The quiet elegance of the home was now a crime scene of the heart, littered with the physical evidence of Jason's rage, and the invisible, more profound scars left by Erika's words. Ned was the first to move, pushing himself up from the floor with a groan, one hand pressed to his throbbing head. The metallic taste of blood was in his mouth, a stark physical confirmation of the unbelievable violence that had just transpired. Someone call an ambulance, he muttered, his voice thick with pain and disbelief. His eyes went to Olivia, who was being carefully helped to her feet by a terrified housekeeper. Shards of glass fell from her dress, twinkling in the afternoon light like malevolent confetti. A thin line of red traced its way down her arm from a shallow cut. I'm all right, Olivia insisted, though her hands trembled violently. Her gaze was fixed on Monica, who had not moved from her spot by the fireplace. Monica stood as if turned to stone, her face pale and tear-streaked, staring at the doorway through which her son had vanished. The verbal assault Jason had launched at her had been more damaging than any physical blow could have been. The accusation in his eyes, the conviction that she was a party to his destruction, had struck a fatal blow to her soul. Monica, Ned said, limping toward her. Monica, look at me. He's not himself. You know that. Erika planted a poisonous idea in his head, and it broke something. Monica slowly turned her head, her eyes hollow. Did she, Ned? Or did she simply turn on a light in a room we've kept dark for 30 years? The question hung in the air, heavy with implication. It was the first crack in the family's unified front of denial, and it was terrifying. Erika, meanwhile, had watched the entire spectacle with a sense of grim satisfaction. Her work was done. The seed of doubt was not only planted in Jason's mind, but had now taken root in Monica's as well. She had achieved her goal. The mighty Quartermaines were fractured, perhaps irreparably. As the family descended into chaos around her, she slipped away unnoticed, a ghost leaving the scene of the catastrophe she had engineered. The game was far from over, but this round was decisively hers. The news, of course, could not be contained. Port Charles was a small town in all the ways that mattered, and a scandal involving the Quartermaines and Jason Morgan was seismic. The rumor mill went into overdrive. At the Metro Court, Carly Corinthos was in a meeting with a hotel supplier when her phone began to buzz incessantly. Impatiently, she finally glanced at it, expecting a message from Sunny or one of her children. The text from a frantic Molly was brief and devastating. Jason attacked Ned and Olivia at the Q mansion. Something about a secret Erika revealed. He's lost it. Carly's blood ran cold. Jason? Attacking Ned? It was unthinkable. Jason's control was legendary. His actions were always precise, justified within the rigid code he lived by. A blind, violent rampage against his own family was the antithesis of everything he was. Without a word to the confused supplier, she stood up, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. "The meeting is over," she announced, her voice trembling only slightly. She had to find Sonny. Now. She found him at the warehouse going over shipping manifests with Max. The casual normalcy of the scene felt like an insult. "Sonny," she said, her voice tight. "We have a problem. A big one." Sonny took one look at her face and dismissed Max with a curt nod. "What is it? Is it one of the kids?" "It's Jason." Carly's words came out in a rush. "He just went to the Quartermain mansion and attacked people. Ned, Olivia. He verbally destroyed Monica. According to Molly, Erika was there. She told him some kind of secret about the night of his accident." Sonny's face darkened. The name Erika was enough to put him on edge, but coupled with Jason's uncharacteristic behavior, it signaled a crisis of the highest order. Jason was his best friend, his brother in arms, the one person whose judgment he trusted implicitly. If Jason had snapped, it meant the foundation of Sonny's entire organization had been compromised. "What secret?" Sonny asked, his mind already racing through possibilities, his hand instinctively reaching for the phone in his pocket. He needed eyes on Jason immediately. "I don't know," Carly admitted, her frustration and fear evident. "But whatever it was, it turned him into a stranger. Sonny, we have to find him before he does something even worse." Their worst fears were already being realized. Jason, a ghost of fury and pain, had not returned to his own apartment. That place represented a life built on a lie. Instead, he found himself at the one location in Port Charles that had always offered a perverse kind of solace. The waterfront near the old warehouse district. The place where his life as Jason Morgan had effectively begun, under Sonny's tutelage. He stood staring at the churning gray water, but he didn't see it. He saw the fragmented, painful pieces of his past rearranging themselves into a new horrifying picture. Every conflicted moment with Alan. Every manipulative gesture from Edward. Monica's desperate, clinging love. It all looked different now. It all looked like guilt. The headaches that had plagued him for years, which doctors had attributed to his brain injury, now felt like the physical manifestation of the truth trying to break free. He felt like a puppet whose strings had just been revealed, and the revulsion was all-consuming. His phone buzzed. It was Sonny. Jason looked at the screen, his finger hovering over the decline button. How could he face Sonny? The entire persona of Jason Morgan, the trusted enforcer, was a Quartermain creation. He was a living, breathing monument to their manipulation. But a deeper instinct, the code of loyalty that was now the only thing he had left, made him answer. "Jason, where are you?" Sonny's voice was calm but firm, the voice he used in a crisis. "I'm fine," Jason replied, his own voice flat, devoid of its usual certainty. "You're not fine," Sonny countered. "I'm hearing things that don't make sense. Talk to me. What happened?" There was a long silence. Jason struggled to find the words to articulate the earthquake that had just leveled his internal world. "Erika was there," he finally said. She said the Quartermains paid Frank Smith to have me neutralized. That the accident was arranged." The line was silent for a beat. Sonny was processing this bombshell, understanding immediately its catastrophic implications. "Jason, that's a hell of an accusation. You know Erika. She's a viper. You can't trust a word she says." "Can't I?" Jason's voice was laced with a bitterness Sonny had never heard before. "It makes sense, Sonny. It all makes a terrible kind of sense. My entire life, the man I am, it was all by their design." "Listen to me," Sonny said, his tone becoming more urgent. "Whatever the truth is, we will find it out. Together. But you attacking Ned, terrorizing Olivia and Monica. That's not you. That's what they want. They want you unstable. They want you to be the monster they can point to and say, 'See? We were right about him all along.' Don't give them that satisfaction." The logic was sound. It was the same logic Jason would have used in any other situation. But this wasn't any other situation. This was the core of his existence. "I need to be alone," Jason said, his voice final. "I need to think." Before Sonny could protest, Jason ended the call and turned off the phone. The connection to his old life was severed. He was adrift, a ship whose moorings had been deliberately cut. The next target on his list of betrayals was not a Quartermain by blood, but in Jason's current state, the distinction was meaningless. It was Michael Quartermain Corinthos, the nephew he had helped raise, the young man he considered a son. Michael, who now ran the legitimate half of the Quartermain empire, who benefited daily from the stability that Jason's shadowy existence provided. In Jason's fractured mind, Michael was complicit. He had accepted the benefits without questioning the source. Meanwhile, at General Hospital, the casualties of the day were being treated. Ned was being stitched up in the ER, while Olivia was treated for minor cuts and shock. The story they gave to the staff was a vague tale of a domestic accident, a fall into a glass table. They couldn't tell the truth. The truth was too damaging, too unbelievable. But the lie did nothing to soothe the terror in their eyes. Diane Miller, the family's sharp-witted attorney, arrived swiftly, her usual cool demeanor replaced by one of grave concern. She conferred with Ned in hushed tones. "Ned, if Jason presses charges, or if the DA gets wind of this." "He won't press charges," Ned said wearily. "This wasn't about that. This was personal. This was a message." The most profound damage, however, was to Monica. She was checked into the hospital for observation, suffering from extreme emotional distress. She lay in the sterile bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying every interaction with Jason over the last 3 decades. Was there a truth to Erika's claim? Had Edward, in his ruthless ambition, capable of such a thing? The doubt was a worm, eating away at her from the inside. Her grief for the son she had lost was now compounded by the hatred of the son who remained. The fallout spread through the hospital like a virus. Elizabeth Weber, who had shared a deep, complicated history with Jason, heard the whispers at the nurse's station. Her heart ached for him. She, more than anyone, understood the man beneath the icy exterior, the man haunted by the ghosts of who he might have been. She tried to call him, but his phone went straight to voicemail. A sense of dread settled in her stomach. The Jason she knew was gone, replaced by a wounded, dangerous animal. The crisis reached its next crescendo when Michael, having heard the panicked rumors, rushed to the hospital to check on his family. He found a battered Ned and a shell-shocked Olivia. As they tried to explain the inexplicable, a new alert came in. Security had been called to the parking garage. There had been an altercation. Michael ran. When he arrived, the scene was one of controlled chaos. Jason was being restrained by 2 security guards, but his focus was entirely on Drew Kane, who was picking himself up off the concrete floor. A trickle of blood from his lip. Drew, who shared Jason's face, a constant reminder of the life that had been stolen from him. "You," Jason had snarled upon seeing Drew. "You got the life that was meant for me. You walked into the family that should have been mine."